You're transgender, right? Does that mean you've fully transitioned? Hey, I heard you recently came out as trans. Congratulations! So does that mean you're gonna fully transition? So, trans man. At last we meet. Tell me, when exactly are you going to fully transition? If you're transgender, you've almost definitely received this question on at least one occasion. And if you're not transgender but know somebody who is, you may have even asked this question yourself, without realising that it's kind of unanswerable, because, as we're about to discuss, full transition is a myth. Whoa, hold your horses for just a minute. Let's get one thing perfectly clear. I am not suggesting that it's impossible for a trans person to complete their own personal transition, because of course they can. When I say that full transition is a myth, what I mean is that full transition doesn't exist in the way people tend to think it does. And yes, I am going to do air quotes every time I say full transition. People assume that transition is a strictly linear process with a clearly defined start and end point, but actually it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, transitiony-wishiny stuff. Transition is not a race where everyone starts in the same place, everyone ends in the same place, and everyone runs the same route. Transition is more like a gym. Allow me to explain. Everyone at the gym is there for a different reason. Some want to lose weight, some want to build muscle mass, and some want to train their endurance. But no two people have the exact same goal in mind. Not everybody wants to lose the same amount of weight, or lift the same amount of weight, or run the same distance on the treadmill. In fact, not everyone even wants to use all the equipment at all. Nobody at the gym uses every single piece of equipment and does every single exercise, and nobody expects them to. Everybody is there for a slightly different reason, and at the same time, they're all there for the same reason: to work out. Now, you may have figured out where I'm going with this, because transition, like going to the gym, is something that everyone does differently. Transition is a deeply personal journey, and no two people have the exact same goals in mind. Some people might want to take hormones, for example, but others don't. Some might want facial reconstruction, or laser hair removal, or genital surgery. And it's not just medical transition. Some people might want to change their name and pronouns, some might want to train their voice. All of these things fall under the umbrella of transition, yet not every single one is necessary for every single trans person. Again, we don't expect gym goers to use every single machine and do every single exercise, so why do we expect trans people to do every single thing they possibly can in order to fully transition? As someone who's been out for nearly 4 years and still hasn't seriously considered starting my medical transition, I get a lot of people saying, well, you're not trans then. If you aren't medically transitioning and you don't have immediate plans to do so, you're not trans. Unfortunately, this is an attitude which is prevalent both outside the trans community and within it, but it comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what being trans actually means. Now, I could make a whole other video about what being trans actually means. In fact, I probably will at some point, but we're way too deep into the rabbit hole for today's video, so I'll just keep it simple. Being trans means that your gender identity is different from that assigned to you at birth. Of course, you aren't actually assigned a gender at birth, you're assigned a sex, and this is where the confusion arises because the two are often used interchangeably. If your sex is male, for example, you're raised as a boy, and you're taught that boy and male mean the same thing, which they don't. Sex refers to our physical characteristics, and before anyone starts clamoring about DNA or chromosomes, I don't want to hear it, because your assigned sex at birth is not based on either of those things. You think the doctor ordered a chromosome test on the day you were born? You think you had a DNA test right then and there? No. They looked at your genitals, that was it. That was the deciding factor. Which is why it's so baffling to me that transphobes are always so hung up on DNA and chromosomes. But that's not the point of the video. The point is that if sex is purely physical, then gender is purely psychological. Your gender identity, like any part of your identity, is quite literally all in your head. Your personality, your attitudes, your thoughts, opinions, emotions, everything that makes you, you, is in here. In short, sex is external, while gender is internal. But this misconception that sex and gender are one and the same is why there's so much confusion about trans people in the first place. It's where we get the infamous born in the wrong body line, which is itself a flawed and outdated view of what being trans means. But if your understanding of trans people is based on this born in the wrong body argument, it only makes sense that a trans person would logically do every single thing they possibly could to make their body right, i.e., full transition. Ultimately, the only step that's actually necessary to fully transition is to accept yourself. Everything else, what you do, what you wear, what you change externally, they're all optional extras. And if those extras are necessary for you to feel comfortable in your own skin, pursue them. And if they're not, don't. At the end of the day, I know in here who I am. And nothing else matters. Hormones, surgeries, voice training, none of that is important to me personally, and your identity is not less valid if you choose not to pursue those things. Again, those things should absolutely be available and accessible to those who do need them, but we shouldn't continue to push this idea that transition is one size fits all. And hey, maybe one day I will take the first steps towards medical transition. At the very least, HRT is something I do intend to eventually pursue. But whether that happens in 2 years, or 20 years, or never at all, it won't make a difference to who I am. It's not a necessity for me right now. Perhaps it never will be. And perhaps it shouldn't have to be. Thank you.